What's up, fellow pilots? It's Caleb here from Air 101. Are you an aircraft mechanic, helicopter mechanic, or ferry pilot? And ever wondered what would happen if you crashed someone's aircraft after working on it? Or you were ferrying it from one location to another location and crashed it? Well, let's talk about it. Many aircraft mechanics, helicopter mechanics, and ferry pilots don't really know how to truly protect themselves when they're flying someone else's aircraft after they have done work on it or they need to ferry it. These individuals just don't know what type of coverage to purchase. Well, if you're doing this type of work, then you want to purchase what is called In-Flight Hangarkeepers Liability. This type of coverage is different than the normal Hangarkeepers Liability coverage that you would also want, but I talked about that in another video and you can find a link at the top of the screen. In-Flight Hangarkeepers Liability would most likely cover you in a situation where you don't own an aircraft but is in your care, custody, and control, and you had to take this aircraft up for a test flight or a maintenance flight or ferry an aircraft from one location to another location, etc. Over the years, I've had a lot of aircraft mechanics want me to look at their aviation insurance policy, and when I look through the insurance policy, I usually see this coverage missing on it. And the reason why it's usually missing is because the individual really just doesn't know about it. This is why I really want to talk about this coverage today and explain it to you what it really covers. I'm about to put up on the screen what this Hangarkeepers Liability actually covers, but before I do that, I have to say this coverage varies from insurance company to insurance company, and if you have any questions, make sure that you give your aviation insurance broker a call and they will be able to help you out. In order to understand what In-Flight Hangarkeepers Liability really covers, we need to first look at what Hangarkeepers Liability covers. It says here, this section covers loss of or damage to aircraft or aircraft equipment not owned, rented, or leased by the insured while on the ground in the care, custody, or control of, or while being serviced, handled, or maintained by the insured or any employee of the insured. I already talked about this in the other video, but this is what we do not talk about in the other video about Hangarkeepers Liability. It says this section does not cover it. Now look at number 3. It says loss of or damage to any aircraft while in flight as defined. Very interesting when reading this. So then how can you actually get In-Flight Hangarkeepers Liability? You need this. Endorsement number 1. It deletes that exclusion and allows you to have coverage for aircraft while in flight that you once again do not own but are in your care, custody, and control. Let's briefly read 1A of this endorsement together. It reads, with respect to Section 2, Hangarkeepers Liability, paragraph 3 of this section does not cover is deleted and shall extend to cover loss of or damage to aircraft while in flight, subject to paragraph B and C below. It shall further extend to indemnify the insured for bodily injury or property damage arising out of such flight, but excluding bodily injury to any pilot, crew member, or passenger. By having this endorsement, it allows you to actually take up the aircraft and fly it. And in section 1B of this endorsement, it mentions that there is a deductible if there was a loss that may happen. Then section 1C talks about the value of the aircraft that you want insured. So then how would you choose a value to put here if you plan on flying lots of different aircraft in a policy term? Basically, you should put a value that matches the highest valued aircraft that you will be flying. Let's say that you plan on flying roughly 20 Cessna 172s worth $100,000, and then you have 2 Cessna 185s worth $150,000. In this section 1C, you would want to make sure that it says $150,000, even though you are still flying 20 172s that are worth $100,000. But in this case, I would advise the aviation insurance company that the majority of flying is going to be on these lower valued machines so that the aviation insurance company can rate your risk accordingly and charge you the appropriate premium. Now, if you're already learning something from this video, make sure that you crash into that like button and give this video a big thumbs up. Please note that this hull value can be increased mid-term, but once again, you most likely will be charged the appropriate premium to have this increased. Then you'll also notice in the section 1C that it talks about third-party liability coverage. Of course, this amount can be increased as well. But remember, this only covers third-party liability. And if you look back at 1A, it says it has exclusions for bodily injury for any pilot, crew member, or passenger. which really makes sense in this case because when you're doing a maintenance flight, you really shouldn't be bringing a passenger with you when you go flying. Then in section 1D, you will want to have the pilot's information so that they can be added right in this section and have their name on this endorsement. The insurance company really doesn't want to do an open pilot warranty in this situation, but instead really want to know who is going to be flying these aircraft. Now, after reading this endorsement, you can understand what In-Flight Hangarkeepers Liability is. Now, here's my 2 biggest recommendations, and you should definitely listen closely to this part of the video. Number 1, make sure that you have a certificate of insurance that outlines the coverage that you have. And make sure that you have this certificate of insurance for each and every flight. And if you don't have the certificate of insurance, make sure that you have this full policy wording as well as this endorsement in the aircraft with you, showing that you have in-flight coverage. Then before you go on each and every flight, make sure that you check that the policy dates are active, that you have the correct hull value, liability, pilot names, etc. By doing these things, it will make sure that you have the correct coverage. Also, sometimes the aircraft that you're working on, the individual that owns the aircraft has decided to remove their coverage or not have coverage on the aircraft while it's in your shop. So in this case, there is not going to be a certificate of insurance that the owner has for that aircraft. So then what happens if you go to take the aircraft flying and then you get ramp checked? This is why you want to make sure that you have your own certificate of insurance and that it is in the aircraft. In saying all of this, this leads into my second recommendation for you. My second recommendation is make sure that the owner continues to have coverage on the aircraft and that they have all risk flight and ground coverage. Because if you plan on taking up someone else's aircraft, you need to understand that in-flight hangar-keepers liability really is a secondary coverage and not a primary coverage. What do I mean by that? Well, to find that answer, you can watch this video up here and it will help you out. Stay current, stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.